Welcome back to another episode of Business Basics. You're on the mic with Dr. H, the Global Mentor Coach. And this podcast is dedicated to everyone in business, those who have been in business for a while, anybody who's looking to start a business. We're here to help you make sure your business basically is a visual representation of what it should be. Want to make sure that you're not confusing your brand or your standards. And so here we are sharing some tips with you to help your business go to the next level. So I'm pretty excited about this particular episode. Well, I'm excited about all of them, to be honest. But today, I want to talk about Pier 1 imports. There's so much that we can learn from them. The last episode I talked about, one of my favorite episodes is Payless, talking about Payless and where Payless went wrong. And essentially, you no longer paid less at Payless. And so here we have in the news just a couple of days ago, Pier 1 imports to close up to 145 stores in yet another attempt to stall steep decline. So the retail chain is hoping to cut more than $100 million in costs as it starts a second consecutive fiscal year with a new plan. And so, it's always important to pivot in your business. You've got to pay attention to the trends in your business, not just in your industry, but in your respective business. You got to keep a close eye on everything. The shares for Pier 1 have declined more than 80% in the past year. So many red flags going on here. The retail chain is now worth less than $55 million. That's so disappointing. It lost $68.8 million in 3 months. Within 3 months, sales were declining 19.5% to $412.5 million last year. They're trying to generate $100 million in savings, but it's really interesting to see this because Pier 1 is a really nice store. I've shopped there before, but there are some things in there that are a little bit expensive. Here's what I think is the challenge. Stores are not paying attention to what their customers are doing. No one's keeping their eye on it. People think that, people's disposable income is just going to keep going and going and going. The reality is that's not the case. If your customers are in the middle class market and the government, based off of tax reform and other things, there's no more middle class, then guess what? You've got to make some changes. You've got to adjust accordingly. And a lot of their shoppers were kind of middle class people. So if you don't have the middle class, you've got to target someone else or figure out another way to get to, those dollars, those buyers, get those sales going. People aren't buying, housewares and stuff like that like they used to. People are running to Target. They're running to Marshalls and Home Goods. There's nothing wrong with those things. They're looking at consignment and, estate sales. That's the stuff that people are looking at. And so you've got to know who and what you're competing against. And it looks to me as if Pier 1 is actually competing against the actual market. You're competing actually against what's happening in the economy, specifically here in the United States. And so, maybe, somebody needs to look at online sales. And the other thing is look at your buyers and what they're buying. If they're buying things that, you want to stay on brand, but if they're buying things that are just consistently not being purchased, you're outpricing yourself. That's crazy. I'm not trying to be funny, but I'm not going to Pier 1 to spend $40 on a candle when I can go to Yankee Candle and get a similar or better smelling candle that will last just as long for 25 or 30 bucks. Same thing with, maybe, a vase, or for those of you who like to say vase, some of the things that, and some people, they have furniture in there. Some people aren't going in there to buy furniture. So you have to look at what people used to buy and look at the trends, the buying trends in your stores. The store's management said the store closure number could increase to up to 15% of stores if the company is unable to achieve performance goals, sales targets, and reductions in occupancy and other costs. So that's a big deal. Again, that's just so much, and it's so disappointing because that's really, it's a really nice store. You go in there, you just feel home, and you just start looking for things to make yourself feel like home. But you've got a lot of broken homes these days, and so people aren't spending like they used to, and it's really not the focal point. A lot of times when people are struggling just to pay their rent, their everyday bills, or to eat. So you got to think about what's happening in the economy around you. If your buyer is struggling, if your customer is struggling just to make ends meet, you've got to switch and make some decisions on, okay, maybe we need to reach across the pond and think globally and try to expand our global market sales with e-commerce. Something has to happen. But there's some, Cheryl Batchelder. She is the interim chief executive officer right now, and she's saying that she's pleased to see their teams executing against a new action plan with urgency, and believe the customer will return to a revitalized Pier 1 this fall. So they already know that customers have been leaving. The question is, what's been happening? What's been happening? Who's not been paying attention to the trends, or who has not cared about the trends? This woman also said Wednesday in an announcement that the results were disappointing and reflected execution issues. And so the plan for 2020, the 2020 fiscal year, is designed to reset, their operating model, and rebuild their business for the future. So it looks like they're kind of headed in the right direction, but hopefully it's not a day late and a dollar too short, because, trying to steer a ship that's kind of already sinking or going in the wrong direction is not as easy. It's like going through a storm. It's not easy to turn that thing around, but hopefully it will, kind of get things going in the right direction. So we'll see. I'm interested to see what's going to happen with Pier 1. I want to keep my eyes on it because it's, again, you hate to see stores like this, decline so quickly. But again, it just says that somebody hasn't been paying attention to the trends. People don't understand that politics does affect the marketplace in a great way. It's huge. And our economy has just been on a roller coaster ride these past three years or so, or even beyond that. So let's keep an eye out on that. But here's what we need to learn from it. You don't wait until things get this bad before you start thinking of how are we going to pivot. You just don't do that. You have to pay attention and see what's really happening. Pay attention to the trends. What are your customers saying? Survey these people. Find out what tax bracket these folks are in. If you don't think, politics and all of this stuff doesn't affect the economy, you're wrong. It absolutely does. And so if you follow the trends, look ahead. It's okay. You really need to be looking ahead at what's happening, what potentially could happen to your customer. And then as a result, what could happen to your business, and plan accordingly. It's better to have a plan and not need it than to need a plan and not have a plan. It's just like money. It's better to have money and not need it than to need it and not have it. It's the same thing in your business. You've got to have a plan. A plan is your money. You've got to know what's going to affect your business. What external factors are affecting your business? What are some internal things that are happening? You've got to keep your eyes on everything possible. What's happening with your competitor? Are any of them closing? I haven't seen anything about Kirkland's closing or anything. Kirkland's is obviously still standing. I haven't seen anything about any other of Pier 1's competitors. There's a couple. I can see the store, but the name is not coming to me. But there's Pottery Barn. Haven't seen anything about Pottery Barn closing. And yes, there are different, price points in it, but it's pretty much similar, as far as it. But Kirkland's is definitely a dead ringer. I don't see anything about them closing. So obviously their eye is on the prize and they're doing something right. What is it that they are doing that's keeping them floating and keeping them going for all intents and purposes that from the outside looking in versus, what your business is doing? So it's important for you to keep your eyes on what's happening in your business, what's happening in your industry, what your competitors are doing, what's happening with your customer. And so you can adjust accordingly. I'm reminded of the movie Mr. Mom, and the character who played the wife, she was doing a marketing campaign for a tuna company. Schooner Tuna. And she said, housewives need your sympathy, not your gimmicks, because they were just depending on gimmicks and this marketing firm just couldn't get it right. And she said, these are all gimmicks and they haven't been working. She said, housewives need your help, not your gimmicks. And so she proposed that they cut their prices because their tuna was the most expensive tuna on the shelf in the grocery store. And so she said, you need to be sympathetic during this time of economic hardship. And so she pitched this campaign for them to cut the price of tuna. And it was the president of the tuna company who was in the commercial. And he basically was, giving a spiel on, their understanding of the economy and what's happening and how they want to help. And that's what ended up happening. And he was standing there doing this commercial with these American flags, and he loved it because he said, it's American. Everything about her campaign is American. Nobody else believed it was going to work. They thought he was going to hate it and they were all going to be fired, and it was just boom. And he was like, where have you been hiding her? Because she just gave us the answer. The answer is we can't be anti-American. We have to care about people. This is what's going to touch the heart of Americans and people and housewives who are, guess what, doing the grocery shopping. So what does that say? What is Pier 1 Imports doing to find out what their customers are going through and how they're going to respond to help them? And that's my challenge to you in your business. What's your customer going through and what's your response to help them get through it? This has been another episode of Business Basics. You've been on the mic with Dr. H, the Global Mentor Coach. I so hope that you are enjoying the podcast. Keep listening to it. Keep sharing it. You can hear the podcast on Spotify. It's on Google Podcasts. It's on Apple iTunes. Keep spreading it. Keep sharing it around to anybody you know that's in business, people who are thinking about being in business, because we're all about helping you make sure that you stay in business, okay? Thanks for tuning in with me, Dr. Race, the Global Mentor Coach. Remember to spread lots of love and light. Have a great day.